Welcome to Construction Trailblazers, the podcast that gets real about leading people, managing projects, and simplifying growth. I'm Samantha C. Prestige, and I work with construction teams and consultants who serve them who need to untangle back office chaos that you can have less firefighting and more traction. You can catch up on our past episodes at constructiontrailblazers.com and find the practical strategies for building a business that runs smoother. All right, today's guest is Myra Villalobos. She's the founder of Villalobos Building, a New Mexico-based commercial contractor that typically tackles federal and state projects. She's committed to raising the bar for integrity, innovation, and the people side of building. Myra's building her company on the values behind her name, Villalobos, which translates to House of Wolves. So hi, Myra. Thanks for joining us today.
I love your intro. I love your energy, Sam, as always.
Thank you. Okay, so give our audience a little bit of insight. We talked about this before, but give us some insight into House of Wolves. And I'll also throw in there that technically I should be afraid of that because my maiden name is Cordero, which means lamb for a lot of people that don't know. Like I've been to Mexican restaurants and they're like Cordero tacos. And I'm like, oh God. But give us some insight into House of Wolves and really what that means for you.
Thank you for bringing that up. So it's my last name, obviously. Villalobos translates to House of Wolf. But what's really interesting is, being a builder now or getting into general construction, that building or space has always been in my name. And that actually didn't occur till recently that, wow, that's always been there. But now what's really been fascinating is to me, not just say that it's House of Wolves, but understanding that for me, it kind of translates more into how we house the wolf within. I really like nature. I really like wildlife. And so now when I look at that name or I think of what does that name mean to me, what does it represent for my company, it's very much about taking those values that are very important to me and almost relating them to what a wolf innately does, right? Working within a pack, but also being very strong independently, understanding that the best way to contribute is being a strong individual so that together as a team, you're more than the sum of your parts. Being very innovative or being okay with being brave and exploring new territory, which I also associate with the wolf. And I think just in general, instinct. There's a lot in construction, I think, and in life, is that you just have to really navigate using your senses, but trusting your instinct as much as possible when you make decisions, because there's a science and there's an art to construction. So all those values I've pulled in, and I realized like how bizarre that it's been in my name this whole time, or that's how I bring it forward.
It's awesome to have those like epiphanies and reflection of like, wow. Now, you said a lot of really cool stuff there. And I want to get a little nerdy with this because wolves are one of my favorite animals, actually. And I think that a lot of people actually very much misunderstand the wolf. And so if I go first with the team stuff that you said, working as a pack, leading, and all of that, we often hear like, alpha guy, alpha male thrown out there sometimes. And a lot of people use it in a derogatory way, like, oh, he's such an alpha bro, right? And actually, like the guy that researched wolves that originally coined the term alpha, he like went back on his definition. Do you know this story?
Yeah. Go ahead though. Yeah.
Right. No. Okay. Well, I was gonna say, like they went back on it. I was like, oh wait, the alpha is not the one in the front of the group. Like he is leading, the other like pack members look up to him, but he's not like the one in the front, like doing all the stuff, trying to be the strongest, trying to be like this kind of asshole wolf. I don't know how you would translate that into like wolf terms, right? He's not a douchey wolf, I guess, but he's this humble, like still strong, but humble leader of the pack. So, and I'd love to know kind of how do you embody that in your own team building and leadership?
I agree with that, right? And I think from what I understand, that guy doing research too, that it wasn't that much about that they're just very family oriented animals in the sense that they have their pair and then they have their offspring usually, and then they run in packs, right? So that there's not necessarily like an alpha or dominance, that's not the real thing. Yeah, I mean, especially being a woman in construction, right? Like I think the approach isn't about being an alpha. There's definitely assertiveness, strength, discipline, all those characteristics that don't have any gender specificity, right? But I guess for me, it's also just my personality type. I try to lead by example. I try to lead. Clarity is a very important thing for me, and I think people deserve clarity when they show up to my job sites or when they work with me. I think that's one of the greatest services I can give people is clarity, or clarity's kindness. Just allowing people to show up in a way where hopefully they can be the best version of themselves. Because honestly, I think especially when you work with tradespeople or artists, that's what I've noticed as well. They're very proud of their work and they kind of just want to show up and get it done. And if you can provide that for them, they'll take care of the rest. I mean, that's already what they want to do. They don't want to worry about the other stuff. And so honestly, that's what I really enjoy doing. And that's like the magic that shows up for me. And I think that's why I try to lead the way I do, is because what I'm trying to get is that outcome, something that I'm not controlling, something that I'm ironically just trying to create space for. If that makes sense.
Absolutely. And I'm curious on this clarity piece that has come up in some other episodes on the show, but also just in general. We see that in a lot of LinkedIn content. I actually just posted about clarity today for ownership and accountability. And I'm interested in like really how you are cultivating that with your teams or with the field. Because you also talked, you connected it to bringing out the best in your team members. So really connect those dots for us. What does that look like in action?
I would love to see just more understanding of what construction is really fascinating. It's nuts what we do. I have so much pride in the things that we do and the structures that we're putting up and just the amount of effort it takes. I'm not sure that the general public understands how much effort it takes to run a construction job. It's like creating a mini company every time you do a new job. So it's a new team, you got certain standards, certain requirements, you have funding requirements or limits, you have time limits, and you have this massive team that has to come together and do things safely, efficiently. And every person has their specialty, right? Truthfully, being a general contractor is being able to see the big picture as much as possible and maintain that perspective and constantly weave expertise together into a very logical, realistic, predictable timeline, into a really structured plan so that everyone can play their part. And it's quite fascinating because you can have the most skilled or talented tradespeople, but there is a really powerful thing in doing it in the right sequence where instead of it being a clash, it is a synchronization, it's a harmony, which can, contribute to safety, it can contribute to efficiency, it can contribute to morale. And so I don't know. Honestly, I feel like a lot of these things I knew intuitively. It just made sense to me. Like, okay, there's this massive plan. Let's break it down piece by piece, right? But the more I've done it over the years, I realized like, yeah, it is pretty intense to have this you have to have this building or this structure in a certain timeline, predictable with a certain amount. And it is pretty nuts because you have to have this very, very clear, strong vision and constantly work towards it. Constantly. Like one word that I think comes up a lot for me that I've learned about my personality or that's really helped me being successful is just relentless. You have to be relentless in your commitment to what the vision is and constantly bringing people into this, orienting them to a common goal. It's intense. It can be intense in a really negative way sometimes, but it can be very intense in the powerful way because you have a lot of strong personalities that are there to do their very specific thing. But when you really orient people on a common goal, as simple as that, and then you create plans, like, logical plans behind it, it's pretty awesome. And honestly, it's a lot parallel like sports. When you're on a sports team and you have a common goal to win and to do these things, you can create some pretty awesome teamwork. It's cool.
Yeah, I mean, you
So I don't know
have
if
to
that
be.
answered your question,
It
Sam.
does. 100% it does. I mean, you have to be so relentless. It's an industry it's extremely easy to give up. I remember someone was telling me a story once, and he was asking this other owner of like, why do you want to be in construction? And the guy was like, oh, for the money. He's like, mm-mm. There are so many other ways to make a lot of money. Why do you want to be in construction? Because this is an easy industry to give up in. And what I appreciated, because I was going to call out the fact that you talk about construction in this very artistic way. And I think I picked up on it when you were talking about weaving things together. You're weaving expertise together in this logical and predictable way, right? And that to me sounds like your artistic appreciation of the industry. And a lot of people wouldn't describe the industry as artistic, right? So was that something that you kind of always saw in the industry, or was that a realization once you started your business?
Yeah, so this might be really cheesy because, I'm on the job site with a bunch of guys and there's some personalities, there's some characters, but we all are. But truthfully, I do have a lot of love and passion for people that work in the trades. And again, I don't know if that just came naturally to me or I really appreciate it because again, there's just something of how they work. I mean, I fell in love with the tradesmen, and I think I came from a family of tradespeople as well. But basically, I think I do see them slightly differently, or I would encourage other people or the world to really look at these people differently or to dive a little bit deeper because when you do work with some of these people, especially out in the field, they're very skilled in physicality of things, right? Like an actual trade, creating things. And then they also have a very strong, like, executive functioning skill set. And not a lot of people have this like duality, right? This ability to quite literally make something, like make your body turn something into something beautiful. And I think these guys or these men and women do it so much that they don't understand that not a majority of the population does that. That just kind of comes naturally to them. And I also kind of attribute it back to like, back in the days, and I know this is really romanticizing it, but back in the days, an artisan or a craft was somebody that was really revered, right? Like we think of the Michelangelos and like those people really transform society because they have this really powerful combination of intellect and working with their hands. And so I think in general, all of us are human natures to create things. And I think I really admire people that turn that into a master craft because it takes so much effort. I don't think people understand. It's a constant effort into refining, being good at manifesting something. It's cool.
Oh, man, I wish more people could speak about the other people on their job sites with the amount of admiration that you do. And I just think that's so incredible, and I'm sure it influences so much of how you show up for those people and how you actually run your business. So that's, I mean, gold stars, props there. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I
Shut
want
it.
to.
Like, Myra, whatever. Just cut it out. Be weird. Like,
But it's like a teenage kid that like appreciates their mom, but like they can't let the mom know that. So they're
right.
in the moment, they're just like, whatever.
Ever on the job site go on this round. But no, I think that is how I show up or try to care for them, or that's the goal because honestly, and I think this is human nature. I think we all just really like seeing each other do well, or like there's just something really special about when somebody really fully realizes themselves. I just think it's exciting to see that stuff. I don't care if you're a trade or whatever you do. It's cool whenever people just are being their full selves and kind of showing up that way. It's energizing to everyone.
100% agree with that. I would argue though that it's for a majority of people, it's actually really hard for them to appreciate someone else living life to the fullest and feeling good.
Mm.
And that comes, we were talking about gratefulness kind of before we hit record here. And I think a lot of people don't practice enough gratitude. And because of that, when we see someone else having moments of happiness and success, it has that seed of envy instead of, oh, that's awesome for you.
Think it's how it shows up though, right? Or how you guys do it because I feel part of that team, right? I'm contributing to that. So we're doing that together. We're sharing that experience together. So maybe like in social media and stuff like that, I think it can separate us, but when you're part of that team, you feel like you're contributing to it. So that's why I think it's also energizing to me.
Yeah. Now, okay, I want to go hop back to something else you mentioned when you were describing kind of what wolves mean to you. And we're gonna get nerdy again with this, my little intro science drop for people. Because you talked about being brave, entering new territory, kind of trusting your instinct and your gut there. And I think sometimes people associate the wolf with the term lone wolf. And so I actually did research on this, guys, because I get curious. And
God,
really the
like this.
purpose, thank you. I'm like, thank you for appreciating science class right now. The purpose of a lone wolf is actually that their purpose is to go find a new family. It's not like, and I think often we hear the term lone wolf with like the mysterious spy in some movie that's like 40, 50 years old and like they've lived a hardened life and they're just like, I'm a lone wolf because no one understands me, right? But a lone wolf is actually typically a younger wolf that is leaving its birth pack to go find a new mate and establish a new territory and new family. So their purpose is to be alone for a short period of time to then go find their new life. And it's not to just be alone forever, which I find extremely interesting because, again, this is one of those terms that we misunderstand and we use it in more of a derogatory way instead of really understanding like what the purpose of it is. So in your wolf instincts and everything, I want to understand where are those moments where you have gone out to find new territory, where you felt like you had to be bold and brave and like, well, that's really scary. So like, how did you do that?
Damn, I love these questions. I love this. Thank you. Well, I think that's really cool or really interesting. And I'm actually curious, or now that I've been in the industry for a while, right? I feel a lot more settled. I feel like I have found my place or I know where I want to be. But there is a strong sense of, I guess, loneliness. Construction is unique in the sense that, at least the way that I worked, I was often alone in the sense that I was traveling a lot to my job sites, right? So we go where the work is. You have to go where the jobs are. And so I've traveled a lot and been traveling a lot alone to get to all these different places. And that's been, I think for some people, that would be really odd or alarming. But that's been a really interesting part where I feel like in some ways, I've been a lone wolf where you have to kind of just trust that what you're doing is what you're supposed to be doing, if that makes sense. I think too, just in general, the journey into construction, it wasn't intentional. I mean, I don't come from a family where, yes, I had a family of tradespeople, but not in construction. So it was really foreign. And I originally intended to get into law enforcement and then kind of happened my way into construction. And I think a lot of people thought it was just really odd, which for me, it was a hardcore trust of, I just need to go into an industry where I make sense. My personality has always been very, I guess the way people would describe it is forward or very strong. And so I always knew I wanted to interact with people in a certain way. I always knew I wanted to do stuff or make stuff happen. And so getting into construction was kind of a lone wolf moment of quite literally leaving an entire track of, a whole different direction in life, quite literally leaving home where I had to, move away an hour and a half away. I did that work for 3 years and I just kind of separated myself, just trusting this is where I have to go. And what's interesting is construction is intimidating. When you get into it at first, I was a young mid-20s, just moving to go work in a company full of guys, just far away from home. My parents are probably just like, what is happening to you?
Come back. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Where is this coming from, right? So I guess I would also put it out there that if there's any people or young women, or I guess just young people in general, I see how construction could be really intense, really intimidating, but there's definitely a certain personality type or there's pros and cons, right? Like that independence. I spend so much time in my vehicle traveling. For some people, that would be really, not a positive experience. For me, it's a place where I can collect my thoughts. It's a place where I can think because I'm just a very internal person, especially whenever you're dealing with these massive teams, you need that break. So I don't know if there's people out there that have that feeling or they're cautious about it. I think that's where also that instinct comes in. You got to kind of sometimes trust it and try it. And that's where that lone wolf, I think, mentality comes out. We all have to at some point leave what's familiar and go find or build something else, or I would hope so, right? And maybe that's a very young person mentality too. I don't know.
I don't think that's just a philosophy of the youth. I think that always go like striving for more, seeing what you can create. How can you live a life that you can be proud of and do things a little bit differently is not youthful at all. I think that that's maturity actually. And to that point of driving around and that being your thinking time, I think not enough people are comfortable in silence. And like actually something I started doing with my kids recently is when I pick them up from their nannies, because they have a nanny share, so I get to drop them off at a house. I get their chaos out of my house for a bit. But when I pick them up, we have our whole like, how was your day? We have a few minutes of, does anyone have questions? You know, like, what do you want to ask me? Because usually there's like a, how does the sun rise in the sky kind of random question that they're asking. And then it's quiet time. Like for a good 10 minutes home, it's quiet time. We're not even playing music in the car. No one's asking me a question. If they do ask me a question, I'm just kind of silent. Like they're not getting anything out of me for that time. And I love it. Like even on my way to go pick up the kids, I don't play music. I'm just like decompressing from the day and thinking through stuff. And what I've realized, especially for my kids when we get back home, is they are so much happier, not always calm. At that point, they're pretty ready to like run around like inside and play, but it's not like this tension and frustration and like they have like this pent up stuff. They're just like, oh, I had time to be calm and think however a 5 and 3-year-old thinks. And now I can go do. And I think I'm kind of rambling now, but I think not enough people are comfortable in the silence. Like our brains are now addicted to stimulation. And they've got to be scrolling or watching something or listening to something. And I'm like, turn your brain off for a bit. Like, what?
Sam, you and I can have so many great I swear I could talk to you for hours. Like we could talk about this. But no, I agree. And then construction is such a fascinating industry where the stimulus can be so physical, but it can be so mental as well. Either extreme, I think, is exhausting. And again, I think there's certain personality types that do better with maybe more physicality, others with being more cognitive. But I definitely think that all of us need that variety, right? Like if you're too cognitive, you get too much in your brain. I know for me, I just can go nuts. I can make myself go nuts just thinking, ruminating. And I think you need that physical release. I think you need that downtime. And so what's again interesting about construction is it can be really intense. It can be really physically intense, really physically overwhelming. God, it can be just really mentally overwhelming thinking about all the million things you have to do. But it's also a really fascinating space where you can kind of swing back and forth between those. And it's been cool because it used to be a lot for me, but now I feel like I found a better balance. And I would hope that some people can start to see that as a value in construction as well. You know, there's a lot of industries where maybe those aren't options. You're fully cognitive, and that's great.
Now, what's interesting there is you also said like how there's a million different things that you have to keep track of, and that's part of your role as a GC. That's what you signed up for. You also mentioned that really your main function is to always see the big picture and never lose sight of that. But also, like in construction, there's all those little details that you still have to be aware of, right? So it's a catch-22 here. It's a pendulum swing between all of that. And so besides having that quiet time in the car, what have been your strategies to find that balance without really sacrificing the quality of a job or sacrificing client or customer communication and all of that?
I think like any other craft, it's repetition. It's constant repetition, right? Like one thing I was talking to one of my family members and telling them like, yeah, I've been working on this bid for like a good month and a half. And they're like, well, what happens if you don't get the bid? And I'm like, we don't get the bid. Nothing happens. We don't get money. And they're like, all that work and you get nothing? I'm like, well, I guess the only thing or the grateful thing about that is it keeps me sharp. It keeps you engaged. It keeps you really constantly thinking. And so I'm constantly working on my craft. I'm constantly building schedules, constantly estimating, constantly looking at drawings and trying to keep up, right? So just like anything else, it's practice, repetition, trying to have mastery of that craft. I think too is what's funny is, you know, because a lot of guys make fun of me like, oh my God, Myra, you're just really intense. You're really anxious. You're just like always thinking about stuff. But there's been so many times where I show up to the job site and I'm like, am I the only one that dreamt about work last night? Like the dimensions on this, or is the submittal wrong? And like the foreman will be like, oh my God, we dream about work all the time. I get freaked out. And I'm like, see, it's all of us. It impacts all of us. It's not just me being like a hypersensitive woman or overthinking. Like you guys do this stuff too. So I think it can really get to us to the point where you quite literally wake up. There's been times where I wake up and I'm like, oh my God, I ordered the wrong thing. Like your brain just knows. So I think for me, I've learned I'm a very, very, again, internal person. As outgoing as I can be, I'm internal. So my saving graces are being out in nature, understanding I need my quiet time. I love being a part of a team, but in my healthiest state, I'm probably 50-50, pretty isolated in a very small group of people. And then, the other time working with a team. And so understanding what works for you, understanding what stimulus feels good, and kind of revolving your life around that, that's what's helped me be successful and remain in construction. Because yeah, it can get really intense sometimes for everyone.
I think yes, to all those things, like reflect, figure out what works for you. And I would also argue that a universal truth, no matter your personality type, even if you're I don't like bugs, I don't want to get dirty kind of person, which I don't think any of our listeners are that kind of person. But if that's you, no shame, no shame, but still being
Right.
outdoors. Like if you go outdoors, actually, I read this recently and I think it's really relevant because it's so easy. We've been talking about the intensity in construction, and we haven't talked about the emotion that comes from that, which is very commonly just anger, right? Most people will skip over whatever sadness, frustration, whatever they're feeling there, and we jump to anger. And I was reading this thing of how emotions are like a muscle, and the more you train one or practice one, the easier it is to use that. And a really good technique is when you are angry to get outside and practice awe. So AWE, just being like in awe of something, which also, side note, I know you're not faith-based, Myra, but so many of our listeners are. So I just want to put this out there that when I first saw the word awesome in the Bible, I was like, what? Because for me, awesome is like one of those goofy, like, oh, that's so rad kind of words that I grew up with. But to see that in the Bible, I was like, yeah, that's awesome. Anyway, go outside and practice awe. Like, even if it's just looking at a weed growing in the middle of a sidewalk, like the awe of, wow, this plant grew, like in between concrete, right? Or like, oh, the light is shining through leaves or something. Like, if you can practice that sense of like amazement with the world, it's much easier for your anger to dissipate. And also over time, you shorten, this is really a science class. I'm sorry, I'm getting so nerdy on this episode, but you shorten the amount of time that it takes for you to get from anger to not angry, which I think is fascinating.
Which again, bringing back to animals, right? Like that's why I love animals and love observing animals is all these emotions, all these feelings, they're not negative. They're meant to protect you, to serve you, right? But it's sitting in them. And in nature, these animals don't sit in those things. Nature is just a lot more tempered and we're natural creatures, right? So I think just being in a space where things are more tempered or you can release things, I think that is a normal state. And when we get in these unnatural rhythms, that's where ruminating can get very detrimental. And I've always wondered, but I don't think that animals ruminate. They can experience all these feelings and emotions, but they release it at appropriate times.
Yeah, if you can learn the art of letting go and also the art of like just assuming positive intent and just, I think just in general, like how could I not be a negative Nancy today is a pretty good rule of thumb. Okay, I know we
Right.
can go on and on. Like you said, we can have so many conversations. You're such a pleasure to talk with, Myra. If there was one thing that you wanted to leave people with, we've talked on a lot of different things, like encouraging people to look at at tradespeople differently. We've talked about the art of construction, clarity, not being this alpha wolf and being dominant, and all those things in leadership. But if there was kind of like one little tidbit that you wanted to leave our listeners with, what would it be?
I will say this. Construction is an industry I truly love. It's a beautiful industry, but there is a lot that has to change. And the only way that it's going to change is if more of us continue step forward, realize that a lot of the things that we do, and I say we because it's not me versus anyone else, right? We are doing this. We are creating this system. What I would encourage is if you're interested in construction or you work in construction, to really find ways where you can move this industry forward. There's a lot of things that need to change that will improve people's lives that are building these structures and that will improve people's lives that are living in these structures. And I think that's a really powerful thing, but there's been a lot of changes that happen. But then I think it's just because it's high risk and there's a lot of things that we'll to because it's familiar. So I would love to see more people step up and step forward and make change. However that is, whatever that is and how you do it, right? As a business owner, I'm constantly trying to navigate that. But I'm excited for the future, and I call everyone forward. Like, don't be afraid, be bold, and let's make some more changes because it's for us. Let's mold this industry more to be for us, by us.
So really what she's saying there, y'all, is be the wolf within you, right? Be bold and brave to step into whatever that new territory for construction can look like and follow your instincts to not be a douchey wolf is what I'm getting. There we go.
I appreciate it so much. Thank you for everything you do for this industry as well. Thank you for including me in this. I truly enjoyed talking to you all the time. I could talk to you for hours.
Oh my gosh. Thank you for those kind words. And thanks for gracing us with your time today, Myra.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure.